Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Creatio's webinar. Today is a special occasion as we'll be discussing Creatio's ideas about driving efficiency in front office processes for banks and credit unions. My name is Creatio, and I look forward to joining one of my colleagues as we discuss the unique capabilities of Creatio in detail and discuss this topic at a higher level. So we hope to make this an interactive discussion today. We welcome you to post all of your questions in the chat section throughout the webinar, and following the discussion, we'll provide all participants who have registered with the recording of the webinar and answer your unanswered questions offline. And we prepared an agenda. We'll first be introducing our speakers and our company, followed by some industry observations of the financial industry. Then we'll talk about why low-code matters for the financial services industry, how low-code platforms support banks and credit unions. Then my colleague will be providing a hands-on demo of the Creatio platform, which will be excellent. And we'll then have a Q&A session as discussed just a few moments ago. So I'd like to hand off to my colleague who's joining me today, Nandish, if you'd like to just give yourself a brief introduction.
I would love to do that, Corey. Hey, good morning, everyone. Nandish Madapati. I'm the Enterprise Solution Manager here at Creatio. I've been in the industry for about 20 plus years right now, so that makes me a kind of veteran, I guess. 15 years in particular on the CRM side. Initially as an end user, and over a period of time transitioning to the other side of developing some low-code applications in CRM. Very excited to be on this call and walking you through some low-code applications for front office. Back to you, Corey.
Excellent. So while this will be a reminder for many of you, we want to just talk to you a bit about Creatio and give you a background on our organization. We are a globally diverse organization with 5 offices worldwide, and these offices are home to over 650 employees. We have a robust and continuously growing partner network of over 700 channel partners. And this robust channel partner network and our large number of employees help us to deliver our solution in 110 countries worldwide. We're also highly recognized by key industry analysts, such as analysts from Gartner and Forrester, which I will discuss in a bit more detail moving forward. Creatio is recognized in 5 Gartner Magic Quadrants. We are a leader in the Magic Quadrant for Salesforce automation and a leader in the Magic Quadrant for CRM lead management. The first 2 of these Magic Quadrants speak to our low-code and process automation capabilities, which we'll be discussing in a bit more detail today as it pertains to how they support financial services organizations. We are also recognized in 7 Forrester Waves, the first 2 speaking to our process automation and low-code capabilities, and the latter 5 speaking to our CRM and SFA capabilities. I think it's important to note that it's a huge accomplishment to be acknowledged in 1 Forrester Wave, and we are acknowledged as a strong performer in 7. So we're very proud of this analyst recognition and continue to grow it. And just to quickly emphasize Creatio's vision, we believe that Creatio has created a world where anyone can automate business ideas in minutes, and we accomplish this through our core differentiators, otherwise referred to as our Creatio superpowers. And those are our BPM engine to change processes faster, our low-code platform to make everyone a developer, and our unified CRM to align sales, service, and marketing. Now we're going to lead off the discussion with Nandish. So Nandish, I'll hand it off to you to take it away.
Thanks, Corey. So I'm very excited to talk about what are some of the main trends in the financial industry that is causing digital disruption or digital transformation, particularly in the banks, right? So before I get into specifics about the actual trends, let's start off with a quick poll. In particular, we are looking at competition, digitization, consumer expectations, and also employee expectations, and not to mention the emergence of new technologies. So before I go further and elaborate on that, let's have the audience vote on that.
Excellent. And I think while we're allowing the audience to take this poll, I think we'll take one of the questions. Nandish, how does that sound?
That sounds a great idea.
Great. Okay, so I'm interested in both process facilitation and optimization, as well as the preservation of privacy of information on behalf of customers and users of the app.
Mhm. So that's actually a fairly common request when you speak to people in financial industry, right? So the way we facilitate optimization and privacy is through many ways. Number one is through access rules. Security is paramount, right? So we definitely do so. Whether that comes in as a two-factor authentication, three-factor authentications to make sure that only the right people have the ability to do so. Also being able to put information on the PCI pod and make sure that we mask out credit card information, license numbers, social security numbers, so that there is no misuse of such data from the internal employees. And as far as facilitation and optimization goes, we also enable that through the business process engine, right? So Creatio is one of those rare CRM PPM engines that allows you to manage those workflows through the concept of dynamic case management, which is a simple guided approach of saying what needs to come next. And then also through process management. So we continue to look at bottlenecks, tell people how long it takes to go from point A to point B. And if there is if it takes more time, the lead time is significantly longer, then our users can use business process to enable more seamless transition between one team to the next team. Escalations would be appropriately done to make sure that there is efficiency and the overall lead time from, let's say, a customer onboarding to customer becoming coming into the bank is minimized.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mandeesh. Now let's take a quick look at the results and then we'll move forward. Great. So it looks like the majority have selected growing digitalization. While we think that many are important that we'll discuss in the presentation moving forward, this is definitely one that we'll certainly have to emphasize.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that there was no takers for employee expectations. I thought with the millennials coming on the workforce, this was going to be, I was expecting at least a non-zero number in there. But I'm not surprised by this, right? Digitalization, digital transformation is an important topic, and that is driving. There's a lot of new entrants in the financial industry services, so I'm not too surprised by this. This is great. Can we switch over to the presentation mode, please? Thank you very much. So let's elaborate a little bit on what are the main trends in the financial industry and what were the things that we see going on from the increased competition. So, for example, a lot of us are looking for higher interest rate, right? So, for example, I've been a Capital One 360 customer for the longest time. They offer me a savings rate of 1.5%, or what Bank of America offers me is about 0.25. It's just scale of an order of magnitude that cannot be denied. So those competitions is coming by shifting things over through online. So they don't like to take phone calls. They try to minimize customer interaction. So there is a trade-off that I do, obviously, but those competitions are making sure that Bank of America's and Wells Fargo and Santander, or all of those big banks now need to make sure that they're also competing in that model. So that is not only increasing the competition, but significantly the business model itself is changing. But all of this is enabled, I believe, by both the customer and the employees. And the reason is millennials have, not to deride them or anything, but that is inevitable, right? With new customers coming in, with new younger generations coming in, the expectations are different. They have grown up with smartphones. They are cater to instant gratification, so they expect things to happen fast. So it's not only getting reflected on the customer side, but also from the employee side. So when I worked in my previous company, we used to hire a lot of students right out of college, and they were frustrated by how many applications that they had to go through to generate an ordering document or some other document to do some sales processes. And basically, whatever expectations they had from their vendors or whatever it is, they were expecting the same thing from their employers. Now, all of this is enabling through low-code technologies. People are saying that, hey, why should we invest if I'm going after a niche application, right? Something, say, pay time off or training requests or something that is very niche. There is no reason for it to be sent to the IT department and waste that time because they are working on much more mission-critical applications that take significant capital cost. And if you give them a smaller project, then they're going to put it in their back burner, and that project will never take off and will never be able to meet the customer expectations. So those are all enabling various industry observations. So how is, where specifically would you use low code versus traditional development? So that distinction needs to be made. Low code doesn't necessarily mean that the custom development is being completely phased out. That will never happen, right? Even when we look at it these days, there is supercomputers and all of that, but there are still companies operating on legacy AS400, IBM mainframes. Those things don't go away because they still serve a purpose. So when you look at it from a low code versus a custom development, we can kind of put it in a simple graph. So on the x-axis is the total cost of ownership, and it is decreasing. So high is on the left side and the low is on the right side. And then from the complexity or meeting a specific business requirements, it's on the y-axis. So low code is specifically used when you are going after one particular use case, and the total cost of ownership should be much lower. So think of it from, say, customer onboarding for financial services. Maybe it is contract approval, maybe it is underwriting, one specific example and that example only, or that use case only, and you don't want it to be sent to the IT department. Custom development obviously is still needed overall building banking applications, insurance applications, wealth management, those will still be there. So those cannot be ignored. So we just have to make clear that while the low code is increasingly getting popular, those custom developments will still be there, but so you have to pick and choose how you want to navigate that landscape. So now let's do a little bit deep dive on where are applications, what are some of the critical common applications that low code can cater for banks and credit unions, right? So when you look at it from a overall banking perspective, each of those processes is a workflow, right? So whether you're reaching out to a customer through your marketing means, whether you're trying to sell a customer a credit card or service your customer from, maybe an address change or something like that, each of that is a process. So CRM is definitely required from catering through those three lines of businesses. But once the sales comes in, once the lead is generated, once the customer service is done, from the front office, what happens when a customer walks in to, let's say, a digital federal credit union right here in Massachusetts and say they want to apply for a new house loan or a new vehicle loan, right? In that case, now you're doing some lending, you're doing some underwriting. So those are other applications as well. And in the back end, there is also the middle office or the back office. You're managing various products. You are doing compliance from making sure that the audit, everything is done properly. So all of that is also a business process. So and can be handled using a low-code platform as long as they are all in the niche areas. And finally, on the corporate services side as well, you're not only catering to the customers, but the employees are the actual ones who are going through this process of onboarding customers. So you want to make sure that they are getting efficient as well, right? They're doing the right things. So you need two kinds of 360-degree view, one for the customer and one for the employee. So how is Creatio enabling, through this low-code technologies, making sure that we are giving them one view of the customer? So if you take a look at it from a sales side, whether it is customer segmentations, omni-channel communications through chat, chatbot, emails, phone calls, whatever that may be, queue management from the customer service perspective, event management if local bank wants to hold on a webinar or an on-site event for loans, loans, maybe there was a hurricane or some natural disaster, how are they able to do so? And from the front office perspective, know your customer, card servicing, card origination, Those things are all specific business processes that can be enabled using low code, no code. And from the middle office or the back office, whether it is anti-money laundering or GDPR or verification, collecting customer information, sending that information to say LexisNexis for data validation, making sure that the person's social security number is indeed correct, bringing that information through the web services through REST APIs, and having that information auto-populated, then launch another business process to make sure that you take it to the next level, right? So those are all can be done using low code, and I'll do my best to make sure that we covered that in the demonstration to the best of their ability, right? And on the right-hand side, where you have the orange bars, ultimately, Creatio will help you to start managing from a applications perspective what is going on. So you need dashboards for the frontline employees, you know, dashboards for the sales employees. All of that is enabled through our business process engine and dynamic case management, depending upon how the low code application is set up. And of course, there is integrations required. Financial services banks typically have their own applications for core banking. That could be a Fiserv or Jack Henry or Symmetra. Those would be the core banking applications. Likewise, they will have something for wealth management, another applications for insurance, other applications for mortgages. All of those applications will interact with Creatio platform, supplying various contact informations and making sure that we are doing a true customer 360. And then everybody, whether you're looking at a particular customer from wealth management perspective, or insurance, or retail banking, you're looking at the exact same customer exactly the same way. So this will enable the banks to upsell, cross-sell. For a upsell, let's say cross-sell a wealth management product, financial product for a retail customer, and retail customers to be sold on a mortgage application, so on and so forth. Excellent. So now that we have a true understanding about where the front offices are done, from a demo perspective, what we're going to do is to focus on customer onboarding. And not just one customer onboarding. When you really think about a bank, these days banks are very complex entities, right? So Bank of America simply doesn't do one product. It's no longer checking account. It's no longer savings account. Bank of America has Merrill Lynch, which does wealth management. They can tie up with Prudential for insurance, so they can sell insurance products. So there is very complexity, and each of those entities will have a different customer onboarding processes. So we'll take a look at how we can enable those customer onboarding processes for, say, wealth management and insurance and so on and so forth. And from an account operations perspective, one of the key things that is needed is householding, right? Householding is very important because there are multiple people living in one house. That could be husband, wife, and maybe college-going kids. So each of that is a separate lead for the bank, but they have to identify that when they send a lead or a phone call to the husband, the wife is also in the same household. So you need to be able to assimilate those different entities of contact and put them into a householding. So I'll give you a very quick preview of what that householding looks like. And then, of course, upsell, whatever, cross-sell them through wealth management. So with that, what we'll do is we will switch gears and switch over to a hands-on demo. And I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Should take just about a second. Corey, if you can give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen, which should be a Creatio.
I can give you a thumbs up. I can see your screen.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. So this is a banking demonstration that is, we've taken out all of the relevant information from the bank, but so this is completely, there's no confidential information or anything like that. So what we have done here is to take a Creatio application and customize it to the banking. So in this case, you'll see workspaces that is relevant to contact center, customer service, marketing, retail banking, sales leaders, which is mainly sales leadership, wealth management, and ultimately there is studio to do whatever business processes. But I'm not going to go into the specifics of the Creatio interface because I'm pretty sure most of you in this webinar already know that, so I'm not going to bother you with that. But what I do want to show you is the many ways in which the leads can come in. So for example, a lead can come in through a chat, it can come in through a phone call, or it could come in from a website like this. So where I can say, okay, I'm Alex Wilson. Many banks have these this kind of websites where they are asking people to put some basic information like contact information, and then ask basic questions like, hey, how are you doing in your financial life, in your 40s or 50s? Do you have all of these kinds of tools, right? So they can basically collect these kinds of financial related questions, and that will pipe a new lead into the bank, right? So these are some questions that give you create a true perspective of the customer, from what do they want to do when they eventually die? Do they have a will? Do they have tax? How are they going to generate income in their retirement? So basically, it's good questions. In this case, we have used Google Forms, but it doesn't have to be Google Forms. It can be anything. It can be their own website, right? So what it does in the background is it collects all of that information, and then it creates a very quick lead in Creatio. So we have collected that information, looked at it from a what kind of website that was, and using low code, no code, we have put a form for the lead saying when was that done, who is the owner of that contact, by quickly scanning through and doing a contact match for that customer, and then seeing if that customer already has interacted with somebody. We just put that owner directly, or if the owner doesn't exist, then we can look at the local, assign it to a BDR or whatever it is. So those things can be done using the low code, no code. So you can see that account and the contact is automatically pre-populated. But not only that, we also enabled a dynamic case management. And this is what I was talking about from a optimization perspective, is to provide a dynamic case management with workflows, right? So is there anybody in this world where somebody has submitted their information, then you call them and they pick up the phone call the very first time? It never really happens, right? So from an operations perspective, what we do is to make sure that there's multiple touch points. Typically these days you're talking about 8 to 10 touch points before you make a connection with that cold lead. But in this case, this was an incoming lead. So potentially you don't need 8 or 10, but you can say that, okay, call the client for the first time. So you place a phone call or you send an email, and if they don't pick up, you can say that, you know what, I'm going to call later, right? So then you click save. So what happens is a low code, the business process is now launched, and we said that, well, we did not reach the customer. So we put another mark to the sales rep to say that, well, call the client the second time. And now this should be done 3 days from now, right? So you can see that you're now doing a multiple touch point with the customer on varying time period, right? So let's say you call the customer the second time again, there is no response. And now it goes to the third time. Now this is now going for a week now, right? And let's say again, there is no call. So now we're going to take a little bit of a break, and now we have pushed it by 3 months. Now you can see that now the date over here is now September 9th. So basically what we're doing is we're not giving up on just because somebody did not answer our phone call the first time. Ideally, in many CRM applications, this is the job for the sales rep. They have to manually create a calendar to remind themselves on when they should call. And the power of low-code, no-code is that we are enabling that in Creatio through whatever business processes that local bank has. Somebody may have do 5 touch points before pushing it to 3 months, whatever that may be. But let's assume for right now that we have reached the customer. It's now September 9th or whatever it is. And now it is time, we call them again, and this time they do pick up and they agree to have a phone call with us. And now as a BDR, we schedule a discovery call with the customer, right? So now you can see that the qualification, which was previously in this qualification stage, has automatically moved over to the discovery call. And in the discovery call, the idea is we want to collect basic information about the customer. Before we go full speed and spend a lot of time on them, we want to make sure that this is a good customer profile for us to continue to have valued conversation, right? So when I get on a discovery call, what I'll do is I will open this lead up and have this dialogue open with in front of me. And as I'm speaking to the customer, I am basically collecting useful information that helps my sales team take it to the next level. And from a banking perspective, these are some of the useful information, like, hey, how much are you making in a given year, right? So let's say 45,000. How much do you have in emergency funds? So let's say it's 15,000. What is your total net worth, right? Let's make it 125 for that example. Or basic information that will help the sales rep to be more prepared when they go and visit the customer and say, how many dependents do you have, 4 dependents, and are you interested in life insurance or disability insurance? So basically, in one phone call, we are guiding the sales rep on collecting that information that is very helpful. And once this information is done, we have collected that information, we can save, and we can complete that task. And we can now save that, and now we can go ahead and start visiting the customer or whatever it is. So this is how we are enabling customizable workflows for different customers depending upon what needs to happen. Now, of course, I don't want to go into the proposal stage or contracting stage or anything like that, but for each of those, they will have different work stages, workflows. Visit Alex Wilson, maybe you want to visit them, start working on the contract life cycle. And let's assume that everything is done, and we will now go ahead and say, well, the customer is now satisfied. We have gone through the due motion of working through the contracts and all of that. In here, since this is a retail customer, now we are saying that, hey, do you want to onboard a new customer? Now that we have completed the onboarding, completed the customer life cycle, now we want to talk about, do you want to onboard a new customer? And the answer is yes, I do want to start onboarding a new customer. And I say yes, then it will start kicking off different workflows for me to say that, okay, now send a new documents. Previously there was only visiting, now there is send documents. And once I complete that task, it will then go into and start populating to me, say that, hey, now let's set up a follow-up call with the branch manager. So what I'm trying to highlight in this case is that this dynamic case management is specifically making sure that there is a uniformity, there is a disciplined task that is assigned to the work to each of these workflows, so that from an employee perspective, you are not guessing what the next step should be. But on the other hand, you are being guided by the low-code, no-code business processes to make sure that irrespective of who you're speaking to, the customer experience is identical. And that is very important, right? Now, once I finish this task up, one of the key requirements from a customer is, I'm pretty sure most of you already have seen this dialogue, so I won't get into that. But let's say if you go into a portfolio of the customer, you can have different lines of business. So currently there is LSP Plus, there is retail banking, and if you want to have a different lines of business, say insurance or mortgage, each of those lines of business can have a different ranking assigned. So for example, I can say that I don't want to do this, so let me go ahead and delete that. And from LSB, I'm going to say that I treat this customer as a B customer, whereas from a retail banking perspective, William Walker thinks that it is an A customer for them. So each department can have their own individual ranking for this particular customer. So these are all cool things that you can do so that each department can feed off each other. Overall, the idea is to make sure the bank makes the most and gets the most increased wallet share per contact. So that is one way to do that. The second way to take this lead is, let's say, when I'm coming from a retail banking perspective, as I'm speaking to the customer, as I'm collecting useful financial information such as annual income and whatever it is, I realize that, hey, this customer is actually primed for wealth management. So very quickly, using efficiency gains, I can simply copy that lead using lines of businesses, whatever that may be, and change the lines of business simply to wealth management, what was previously LSB. Now you can see that when I picked up wealth management, just by picking one thing up, you can see a completely different workflow showed up for the wealth management. And I can assign this to, say, somebody else, maybe to Peter Moore or somebody like that. And I can now say, this is a lead that is assigned to somebody else, right? So when they show up next day, they will realize that I have created, rather in this case, have assigned a new lead to Peter for Alex Wilson for wealth management. And he has a completely different thing. So unlike calling the customer previously multiple times before you schedule a discovery call, with the wealth management, we are scheduling a field visit right away. The idea here is that in wealth management, face-to-face matters, right? It is never pick up a phone call when you're giving your wealth to be managed by a particular bank. You want to make sure the bank is doing the due diligence of showing up to your house, giving you the right respect and all of that. So this is a completely different way of how we are making sure that each department, whether it is insurance, whether that is mortgage, whether that is wealth management or retail banking, will have a different workflows with different tasks underneath each of that. So let's hypothetically assume that from a wealth management perspective, we have went ahead and completed this task. We have scheduled a visit. And now we will go ahead and complete that task up. We'll go to the contracting stage. We'll submit our proposal. We'll submit our order placement. And from a customer onboarding perspective, when I say customer onboarding, so now you can see that this experience of onboarding is very different than the customer onboarding for retail bank. In the retail bank, it popped up a dialog box saying that, hey, do you want to onboard the customer? And then the tasks that was assigned to us was to mail the documents to the customer, have a scheduled call from a local branch office to reach out to the customer just to do a touch point. But in the wealth management, face-to-face meetings matter, right? And it's not just face-to-face meetings, but also to do a quarterly review. We don't want the Peter Moore in this case to manually go in and then say that, oh, wait a minute, I brought in Alex Wilson on June 9th. So on October 9th, I need to do a quarterly review with him. And then I want to do an annual review with him a year from now, 2021, right? We don't want him to do those things manually. So those are all automated tasks that we are doing with wealth management. So you can see that on October 9th on my calendar, I will get this notification that I need to do a quarterly review, and then I'll follow up with Alex Wilson and make sure that I do the review with him. So let's go ahead and complete that task and so on and so forth. So if you're probably wondering how are these workflows being done, I suspect many of you already know that, but this is basically all of the section cases that you can create. In this case, we have created 2 section cases, one for wealth management, another for LSP. Each of that in turn has its own workflow that is different. So wealth management has a different set of tasks that is assigned in here. And we are setting up a pre-configured page for scheduling a visit, we're generating orders, and customer onboarding has different tasks. Meanwhile, for the LSB Plus, which is the initial workflow that I showed you, that had a completely different qualification of calling the customer multiple times, scheduling a discovery call through a pre-configured page, and then leveraging business processes for each of that workflow as well. So you can have a complete configuration without having to worry about different conditions on doing so. Now, this is not just limited, business processes not just limited to workflow. You can do a lot of these automated things as well. So for example, let's say I'm talking to Alex Wilson, and in the process, he says that, listen, I'm looking for some insurance products. So very quickly, as I'm talking to him over the phone, I can say that, hey, this Alex Wilson is primed for lead for insurance, right? So much like you saw by copying and then assigning to him, in the same way, I can, with single click, I was able to create a new lead. Take all of that information about Alex Wilson, and you can see that there's deduplications as automatically handled, and line of business is automatically tagged to insurance. So you can assign those, create those simple workflows or business processes to make sure that you're making the team as efficient as possible with one click, making sure everything is done. Assign this to somebody else, maybe to, I don't know, maybe King or somebody like that. Or whoever is managing that insurance business, so that they know that me as Peter Moore have assigned a new task or a new lead for insurance for Alex Wilson, so that they can follow up and make sure that they are doing the right things. So in addition to that, one of the frequently asked business processes is the address change, right? When an address gets changed, it is actually much more complicated, right? So this is one of the most underrated or mostly requested feature in banks, because a particular contact may not necessarily work with one product. They have to do changes to the credit cards, they have to do changes to the checking account, they have to do changes to it is IRAs or some other financial products. You have to do changes to that. Insurance and all of that. So CRM should be that hub of information that pushes the address changes to various entities or various applications, whether that be core banking applications or insurance or whatever that may be. But on the other hand, if you want to do that, you can do that. So select the business, select the address that you want to change, and simply launch the change address business process. So what it does is you can now input a new address, and then when you click save, this new address doesn't, by the way, will not get updated right away, but rather that information will be sent into the main or to the back office, so that they can make sure that the address is indeed correct. And once the address has been validated through whatever means, that may be through a phone call or through an email, then that address is automatically updated on whatever applications or solutions that the banking uses for other financial products. So address change is another underrated place where you can use business process to make sure that you are using things very efficiently. Otherwise, if you don't do that, there will be one address that wealth management will see, another address that the retail banking will see. So the correspondence gets mixed up, and that causes a lot of headaches from the auditing perspective. I have one more topic, and then we'll switch over to taking questions from the audience. And that is looking at it from a householding perspective, right? Householding is another critical component of banking, so of banks. So what that means is that when you're looking at from a individual, so in this case, we're looking at Alex Wilson. Alex Wilson resides in a particular family, and that family may not necessarily be one person, right? So typically what you want to do from a banking perspective is to see who else is residing in that address. So you can create something called as a householding record, where everybody who's residing in the same address will be grouped together, so that when you do marketing purposes, you want to make sure that you know exactly who is in that family, and as and when the children come of age, you're probably trying to sell them student credit cards or education loans or whatever that may be, right? So this is a good way of collecting that. So in this case, Alex Wilson is an individual, but when I click on the householding for Wilson family, I get a record that tells me that Alex Wilson, by the way, is one individual. He gets his own ID of 001, but in that household, sharing the same address, is also his spouse, Alice Phillips, and she has an individual number of 002, right? Alex, by the way, has checking account that is currently active, Visa that is currently inactive, and savings account that is currently active. So out of 3 financial products, he has 1 product that is currently inactive, and his spouse is currently only using MasterCard from our bank. So there is definitely uh, possibility that we can sell her a Visa. Maybe we can sell her an additional savings account. Maybe since they are a family, maybe this might be a prime household to sell insurance, because as they are trying to start a family, life insurance becomes very important. So these are all the useful insights that you can develop as you're doing this householding strategy. Now, why am I bringing you this? This householding strategy or this custom object is basically a custom object. It was actually an object that I just created and then grouped them together using the details. So using very simple details. So this is all it is, right? Creating a simple custom object, and then say, how are we creating these details and simple things like that. So it is very easy to create custom objects in Creatio using low code, no code. This entire process took me about an hour or so to assemble that together. And therefore it is very simple. So if you go to Alice Phillips, you will see that she will only have 002 from her family member perspective, whereas Alex Wilson will have 001. So you can see that from an individual perspective, they will only see information that is relevant for them, but from a householding perspective, you're grouping them all together. So this is basically the summary of what I wanted to show from a demo perspective, to show you how you can enable different workflows, make teams very efficient using Customer 360, whether you're looking at from a wealth management perspective or from a retail management perspective. Have each teams have different rankings, pass the lead from one department to the other department, and group different contacts into a single householding, so that you get a true insight about what other products that you can sell to them. With that, Corey, I'm going to end my demo, and we'll open up to any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nandish. That was a really fantastic demo. So let's take some more questions from the audience. Our first question is the tool only for banking or applicable to corporate companies?
No, it is not. So banking is just a customized application that we have created when we sell that as a banking applications in Creatio. But it's not limited to just banking. So you can use it on a retail perspective, on a B2C side. You can use it obviously to a B2B. I think a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, one of our partners, Reply, have built a supply chain application for warehouse management in Creatio. So we have a lot of customers in non-banking sectors that are also using Creatio as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Nandish. Our next question is it possible to integrate Creatio with existing databases and backend systems?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is one of the common questions that we get. Actually, that's the very first question we get. Because we often talk about deduplications, customer management, but the reality is most of these banks have their own core banking solutions, Fiserv, Jack Henry, Symmetra, whatever that may be, and they like to keep it that way, right? So their true customer entity is sitting in those customer databases. So it's critical for Creatio to be integrated with those platforms. So whether it is End Credit Union or OTP Bank in Poland or whatever banks that we have, we all have to integrate with those various applications. And it's just not core banking. It could be a wealth management applications, which could be completely different. LPL financials for wealth management. There is other applications for insurance. So the answer is yes, we are open APIs. We can integrate with pretty much anything. And there are many ways to do so, through web services, if it is enabled, or through database to database integrations. But the short answer is yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Nandish. Next question is, there is a lot of personal banking data. That is why we need to remain compliant with regulation. How does CRM help to deal with this?
Yeah, so again, I think I kind of answered that earlier in the presentation. So the idea is that PCI is one way to secure your data in Creatio. So that was actually another, actually, I'm in the process of helping a financial customer. They're not a bank, but they manage ATM machines. So the PCI information came because they store credit card information. So the idea is that we will we use the PCI part through Amazon or Azure for data privacy. We do go through extensive security checks to make sure that none of the information is leaked out. The good news about Creatio is that we are a single tenant, which means that every customer gets their own rack in the data center, so their data is not shared like a multi-tenant applications. Many of these CRM applications are multi-tenant, including Salesforce for that matter. So that information is not kept apart by a very thin wall. We don't do that. So there is that security. And in addition to that, you can configure through our implementation partners 2-factor or 3-factor authentication to make sure that only the genuine and the employees of a higher ranking are able to see it. So through access rules, we can make sure that we don't display social security numbers, credit card numbers, and even if you were to show it, we can mask that information and only display the last 4 digits for employee, customer verifications and so on and so forth. So there are many ways in which you can handle privacy.
Excellent, thank you, Nandish. Okay, another question. How can we build a more robust profile of an ideal banking prospect in this tool? So using Creatio.
I think the answer for that is basically an extension of the householding concept that I ended my demo with. That was a custom object that was built with within Creatio. So ideal prospect is subjective, right? What is an ideal profile of a customer for bank A may not necessarily be for bank B. One could be catering, like Capital 360 caters entirely through online. Whereas Bank of America does online print ads and social media perhaps. So it depends upon how you want to reach out to them and how you want to build the profile of the customer itself. So whatever that may be, the idea is that you can create those custom objects. Make sure that using Creatio, you can update the customer information through social networks, whether that be Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or YouTube, and pull as much information as possible from third-party sources and have that automatically update that in Creatio. So therefore, as over a period of time, you have a rich data of the customer, and of course using Creatio's strong customer segmentation algorithms, you can segment your customers to make sure that you're targeting them with the right financial products based on the information that you have.
Great, thank you, Nandish. And how have you helped different banks meet diverse challenges? I know we did discuss this a little bit, but maybe just some examples of how Creatio has helped different banks.
Absolutely. So again, the demo was geared mainly towards that, right? So and everything that I showed you from a true customer 360, catering banks from various applications. So one of the key challenges, for example, was when we were talking to many banks, they were like, I need to make sure that, the insurance team was saying that I don't have visibility into the retail banks, right? So somebody has a checking account and a savings account of a particular balance, and when the mortgage rates drop, the mortgage team wants to send out automated emails to those contacts saying that, hey, these guys have sufficient bank balance, the mortgage rates have dropped off, maybe they might be willing to refinance their housing with us, right? So those are critical things that we can do with our business process engine, number one. Number two is looking at it from a householding perspective. When I talk to the financial banks, they're always talking about, hey, we want to make sure that we are not overwhelming, we're not sending like 5 letters to the same housing address for different people, right? So they need to understand from a householding perspective. So using householding is a great way to make sure that you are doing in an optimized way of communications between between the house members. So you only send one letter to the main household, maybe wait a couple more days, send it to the second member in that same household, right? So that is another way to do so. So there are many ways in which you can we have helped customers address those challenges. And the third one that I talked about was the address change. It sounds very simple, but man, it can get very complex when you're talking about thousands of customers. Not everybody has a record so for example, a customer could only be a insurance customer or a mortgage customer, so they don't have a record in the core banking software. So how do you make sure that that data is exchanged without a CRM or without Creatio doing that? So we do all of those things.
Great. And then one of our last questions is it possible to connect cards that are issued to customers, and what accounts are they linked to?
I'm guessing by the cards they're talking about credit cards and debit cards, and the answer is yes, right? So
Yes.
I kind of answered that in the householding strategy by talking about how you can group those things. So in the financial services applications, we actually have a product catalog that is pretty comprehensive, and product catalog could be mortgages for 30 years, 15 years, 10 years, 5/1 ARM, for credit cards, for debit cards. So all those cards can be managed in our product catalog in Creatio. And then from my contact perspective, I think I kind of glossed that over very quickly. But in that Alex Wilson contact record that I talked about, it will show you, it will display all of the financial products that you have by financial types. What that means is it will show you what checking accounts are there, what IRAs are there, what insurance products they have purchased, and any credit cards and debit cards they have, whether they're active or inactive, through history as well. So when did they activate it? When did they deactivate it? You can have all of that information in Creatio.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nandish, for answering all the audience's questions. And again, to our participants who did register for the webinar today, we will be following up with a recording of the webinar, which includes our demo hosted by Nandish. And we will answer any unanswered questions that you follow up with offline today. So thank you again to our participants, and thank you, Nandish, for a great discussion.
Welcome. My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.